I'm Barbara.
I'm Cheryl.
And I'm Naima. We're three Black moms. By now, everyone has heard the name Anjanette Young. And that name is becoming synonymous with humiliation, unlawful entry, and abuse by police who chose to ignore the cries of a woman standing in the nude as they broke into her home saying they were looking for a felon, and they handcuffed her and traumatized her by treating her like a criminal. This was an outrage felt all around the world. Everybody who has seen this act by Chicago police breaking into this woman's home felt outrage. And if you're a woman, you definitely felt her pain. So there have been many voices that have protested this act, but many are also wondering, what do we do to make sure this never happens to another woman again, or any individual? There is a point when such degradation and humiliation should not be allowed. There have been press conferences held by various groups here in Chicago demanding the immediate firing of the officers involved. But something else needs to be done. Something else needs to be said. And even though Mayor Lori Lightfoot issued an apology, many people still feel that's just not enough. So we're going to talk about this and take a look at the impact of this humiliation of a woman. So what do you think when you first saw that? What was your first response in terms of what you felt should happen to the officers that participated in that?
Let me start, because I think Barbara probably have a much more Christian approach to this. I'm just going on faith. I'm also a Christian, but my first thoughts are not Christian-like at all, and I don't apologize for them. Malcolm X said it best when he said, "No one is more disrespected than Black women." And this just goes to show the depths of degradation that white men will go to, and white women will go to degrade and humiliate a Black woman. This woman was a social worker, but it doesn't even matter that she is a fine, upstanding citizen. It wouldn't have mattered if she had been a criminal. She is first and foremost a human being. And when I saw that video, and I'm so tired in one sense of watching what I want to call either murder porn or humiliation porn of Black people, but I forced myself to watch this whole thing, and I listened to her crying and screaming and telling them, "No one lives here but me. I'm alone. I don't know what you're talking about." And not allowing her to get dressed. She was in her apartment after she came home from work, and the fact that they would not allow her the dignity of covering herself in a room full of strange men just angered me to the point of tears, and not just sad tears or infuriating tears. I'm talking murderous tears. And that's not a Christian feeling, but I felt that violation. This was a rape. This was a rape by the Chicago Police Department. It was a rape of the psychological. It's traumatizing. And God bless her for being brave enough to say, "I want people to know that this is what happened to me," because this was a perverse pleasure that they took in humiliating this woman. And an apology is not enough. I want them all fired. I want them all to bear the brunt. I don't want the Chicago taxpayers to pay for this. I want them to all lose their pensions, all of them. Everyone who was in that room, that's what I would say would be close to being enough.
I don't know. That sounds like a pretty Christian response to me.
Well, the murder part probably
I
is.
know Jesus. I think they say, you know.
Barbara?
I think that this absolutely reminded me of another incident of a young woman who was driving in her BMW. She had stopped at the light. The police officer pulled her over, questioned her even about owning this car. Now, this was her car. She was a young lawyer. They arrested her. She was put in a mental facility because she said, oh, President Obama receives and responds to my tweets. And they declared that she was crazy. Now, this woman was approximately the same age as my own daughter, Lavinia. And I remember feeling, as I read that story, the outrage of it, the point of where I was almost crying, because I'm thinking, you know, this could have been my own daughter. And the way that she was treated before she was released, where they took this woman's clothes off of her, drugged her, and forced her against her will in this mental facility, and then treated her like she had mental problems. That entire incident so enraged me that I had to write a letter sending, you know, not just my protest, but my condolences for the way this woman was treated before she was released. Now, I realize, I think maybe a year or two later, she brought suit against the police department, and I don't recollect if she was compensated for the treatment that she received. I think the last thing that I read said that the case was dropped, or that she was not compensated for what she had gone through. But these things that are brought up in the news media makes you wonder how many incidences like this go unreported. This was a major scene that we're talking about now because it made national news because of the outrage of it, the carelessness and the unfeelingness of the police that were involved in it. And I found the entire incident just completely reprehensible. I was interviewed some time ago about another incident where I was on my way to the post office, and the local news media were standing there interviewing people about a recent case. And I told them about how, as a citizen, we have the right to feel that we are protected. Our people that are placed in those positions of authority, they either need to have better training, they need to live in the neighborhoods in which they police people, they need to know that the people that they are brought about to serve and protect, they should not be bullied or treated like, you know, the police in the television shows. This is not SWAT, you know, coming after criminals. These are ordinary citizens that fall at the hands of people who, number one, they're not trained, they have other agenda, they don't have the right perspective of dealing with people. And I just found myself so overcome by that situation, because I'm thinking, that could have been me. That woman could have been me. And that's what makes you feel so vulnerable and angered, and thinking something needs to be done on the part of citizens, banding together and, you know, doing more than writing your congressman, but doing something that is going to change the way that people in authority behave toward your average citizen.
Well, this is the thing that's worse. I mean, other than, obviously, I should make a disclaimer when I say that I felt like this is my feeling about the way that these people should be fired, or you know, because anybody, when they see someone being violated, they think that that person should be dealt with by deadly force. And obviously me as a person, I can't say that and say, oh yeah, if they all got shot, I'd be happy about it. But I want them to have that feeling of being terrorized. If they felt that feeling of being terrorized, maybe they wouldn't terrorize us so much. Not only that, the person that they were looking for had an ankle bracelet, was in that same apartment complex, but was easily found because he had an ankle bracelet on, and they could have found what apartment he was in. No, they realized later that they'd had the wrong one. And they said, oh, sorry. But really, what happens, I think, is that these police officers, there's way too many of them coming into a house. They're all hepped up. You know, she was very lucky that she really wasn't shot. If she had made any kind of move, they might have shot her and we would have never, ever known. And if she hadn't been brave enough to say, no, I want this tape shown, because they tried to hide it. In fact, they did hide it for what, a year or two?
A year, yes.
So if she hadn't been brave enough to say, no, I want this publicized, we still would never have known that this woman was violated. She was violated in her own home by people who say that they are here to serve and protect. Let me tell you, they are not here to serve and protect us. They are here to serve and protect white people and white property. The rest of us, if we get a serve and protect, then we're lucky that day, because most of the time we are criminalized and assume that we are guilty of something. And really what we're guilty of is being Black.
And I want to address the fact that the woman on the force was completely unhelpful. And let me tell you something that happened to me years ago. I was with a group of young believers. We were dressed in costume because we were doing street drama. We were at a KISS concert that was performing at the amphitheater in Chicago downtown. So everyone is standing outside in line. The concert hasn't started yet, but we're passing out pamphlets about Jesus. We are doing our theater. My partner, Mary Kay, was dressed as a mime. I was dressed as a gypsy. And we had started walking. Some people came out of the line to actually pray with us. The police drove up. One man was so irate, I could not believe his behavior. He was like, get out of here right now, or I'm going to arrest all of you and throw you in the patrol wagon. And so we left. We did not want to be in trouble. We weren't trying to intimidate anybody. We were just Christians out doing our theater and acting. So we walked down the street. We go all the way, a block away from the amphitheater. We turn the corner. One of the people who had followed us stopped to pray with Mary Kay. The police car zoomed from around the corner. The police officer jumped out and said, that's it, you're under arrest. And he only wanted to take me and Mary Kay. But there were 5 of our brothers with us who said, oh no, you take our sisters, you take us too. And this enrages police officer so much. He took a couple of the guys, slammed them against the car. And then there was a female officer there with them. She did absolutely nothing. She just stood there watching while this roughness was going on. We all got put in the patrol wagon, taken, driving along in it downtown. We felt like we were Paul and Silas. We're inside, we're singing songs. And then the police car stops at a Burger King because they're going to get some hamburgers. And one of the patrons says, oh, what you got there? And he says, oh, just a bunch of Jesus freaks. He goes, oh yeah, they're really dangerous. And one of the other people standing around said, what are you arrested for? We said, for praying. And they just thought that was pretty hilarious. They took us downtown. We were in jail. We were split up. The men went to the men's side. Me and Mary Kay were on the women's side. The female officers were so mean to us. The first one, and let me just say this, they were all Black. These were all Black female police officers. One of them reached over and snatched off my wig and said, what do you think you're doing? And I said, we were just telling people about Jesus. And she said, you need to keep that in church. And I just said to her real politely, I says, well, the Bible says to preach the word in season and out of season. And so the other one starts deriding her. The other police officer says, oh, Mabel, she's telling you when you can preach the word. And anyway, they took me and Mary Kay, and they put us in separate cells. We could still hear each other. We could talk to each other. They had us be in overnight. Now, what happened, one of our pastors had actually come down immediately to have us released, but they gave him so much paperwork that it took all night before we were released. We were released the next morning at about 4 or 5 in the morning. So then we go home, and then when our case comes up, the police officers don't even show up, and everything was thrown out because we had been charged with obstructing traffic, except we were like 2 blocks away from the amphitheater. So that has been my interaction with unlawful behavior on the part of Chicago police officers.
You hadn't thought of filing a lawsuit? I mean, they did violate your rights.
Barbara, I didn't know you were a jailbird.
Yeah, you know, we've got these stories. All of us have been in jail except Eric.
But you know what? When you look at the fact that even the officers that are female, even the officers that are Black are violating people, it isn't even a racial issue. It's a
no, it is, and it isn't.
Happens when you get part of that organization. And the female that sat there and watched you all get banged up and everything, she was in training. She was being shown, this is how you treat people.
Mm-hmm.
So she was there observing. And this is what happens. So we can't even say, well, the answer is more female officers who will be sensitive or more Black officers who will be sensitive, because that whole police culture, that whole attitude is one of abusing citizens. And the structure itself has to be dismantled because it evolved out of the slave patrols.
Yes, it did.
Was an abusive system of forcing people back into slavery and making every Black person who walked the street subjected to be stopped and arrested if they couldn't prove that they had been given official permission by a white master to travel. So that same attitude is what was adopted in the police system. Yes. And that's why it's abusive, regardless of who becomes an officer. So,
and that is why I say it is built to, the system is not broken. It is working the way it's supposed to. Right. This is why it was to protect white people and white people's property. And sometimes that meant Black people who were enslaved, and now it means their property. This is why you will have people hailing this psychopath who at 17 years old crossed state lines to go to a protest he had nothing to do with. He didn't even live in that state, and people hailing him as a hero, even though he murdered 2 white men. So this is the thing, is that this is about this culture about brutalizing people of color specifically. And it doesn't matter if the officers were Black, because they are part of that same culture of brutalizing. And sometimes people say, sometimes they're worse. I could tell you stories of people who have said these things about police officers that I knew as my friends' fathers, and they knew them from a whole nother thing. But this is the thing. What happened to this beautiful woman, brave woman, social worker, is going to keep happening until somebody holds the police accountable, until they banish the police unions that say that they have qualified immunity for all their dirty deeds, until they make transparent, until they start taking away pensions. When they get hit in the pocketbook, that will stop. Because when they are personally responsible, I'm not worried that they might hesitate, if in case something bad happens. I'm more worried that they're going to barge into my door because they have one number off on their warrant, or they're on the wrong street. That's what I've got to worry about. But you know what? They'll be more careful if it's going to cost them.
So what do you think should be done to the officers involved, and what type of legislation do you think should be passed that would prevent this from ever happening again?
Firing for all of them. Loss of pension for all of them. That's the first. Let her be able to sue all of them. You know what?
Wrongful arrest.
Wrongful arrest. Because all the money in the world, I don't care if they gave this woman $10 million, she was still traumatized and humiliated. And treated inhumanely. That's what that should be the start. The start is that the officers should all get fired. And the first thing that should happen in these kind of cases where this happens, the legislation should say, you're on leave, not paid leave. You're on leave without pay until we straighten this out.
People have been saying, you know, when the mayor was asked, Mayor Lori Lightfoot was asked, what are you going to do? And she said, well, first we have to conduct an investigation. And people were saying, what do you have to investigate? We saw it on tape.
Yes.
What else do you need to see? So I don't know if that's something that she has to say, but it certainly doesn't make any sense when what happened was very clearly visible. So the demand has been for every last officer to be fired immediately, not, you know, stringing this out. Well, we got to investigate. Well, we got to get witnesses. No, fire everybody. And we actually, there is a move now. Women are organizing and coalescing, and they're gathering 1,000 women for some massive action. And we're also planning a lawsuit. So now it's just a matter of how to direct and really looking at a class action suit and looking at a human rights violation lawsuit, because so many people have been through that same thing, just like, you know, Barbara, you all have been through, you know, wrongful arrest. So we have to focus in on what the scope of this lawsuit is going to be, but the purpose is to make sure this cannot happen again, and to make sure that it's clear that any officers that participate in anything like this is fired. And somebody's got to have the courage to enforce this. So the 1,000 women that are gathering, they intend to perform some direct action, confrontative activities until these demands are met. And I believe the intention is going to be to disrupt City Hall until those officers are all fired.
You know, the problem really stems from way further back than that even. What makes a person even want to go into law enforcement? Is this you wanting to right wrongs that you see in society? Or do you just want to exercise your right to be a bully with a badge on your chest? You know, there is a program that I totally have started watching every now and then. It's called Chicago Police. And the episode that I saw recently showed how there was unlawful behavior, but all of the police officers stuck together, even though they knew that there was unlawful behavior. And this one police officer was being punished for actually telling.
Oh, you mean Chicago PD?
On what, this is Chicago P. Yeah.
Yeah, I watch all those shows, all those Bigfoot shows. But you know, and that's a good show because they've kind of changed. If you notice, there's a lot more changes where they're starting to pull back on that cop feeling of, well, you know, yeah, we'll worry about the logistics and the legality later. And they've really started to address that more, because I think that that's where that whole cop mentality comes from. People, we all grow up with that, where, you know, yeah, exigent circumstances, they make up they heard somebody screaming and all this other kind of stuff, and then they punish the ones, I know the episode that you're talking about, who decided to disrupt that blue wall of silence by telling the truth, and was punished and almost killed, you know, for telling the truth. You have 1,000 good cops and 11 bad cops, and those 1,000 bad cops or good cops don't say anything. You have 1,011 bad cops. If nobody says anything, you're all bad cops. If you see something and you don't say something because your brothers in blue are more important than the law, then you are a criminal also. So stop saying that it's just a few bad apples. If you have a one bad apple and you're not getting it, then you're spoiling the whole bunch and you're all bad apples.
All bad, absolutely. Well, we got to go, but we definitely want to encourage everybody who is affected by this event to get involved in whatever organizing efforts there are, because we have to collectively stop injustice. We have to collectively be a part of the solution. So that means stand up and be heard, and however you can do so. Thanks so much for joining us.
And I would just say, if you're on the side of the cops, switch it around. Think about if someone barged in on you,
or your
totally
mother
naked. Yeah, or your mother, or your sister, or your wife, and treated you this way. Put that person's face on this woman's body and see if you feel the same way about, oh, let this investigation play out. See if you would feel as cop friendly if that happened to you or someone that you loved.
Right. Because this was a sexual assault. And
yes.
They stood there and they watched her, and it was a sadistic pleasure they got from humiliating her. And for that, they deserve to pay. And we need to make it clear that that's exactly what they did. And they cannot hide behind the law in doing what really was an act of rape. So we'll certainly welcome your comments. And we asked the question, what should happen to the officers involved, and what law should be passed to prevent this from ever happening? So feel free to leave your comments, and we'll see you next time. I'm Naima.
I'm Cheryl.
I'm Barbara, and we are 3 Black moms.